Love to hear a Bob White singing his song. See a big buck on a frosty dawn. Watch our kids catch their first bluegill. See them laugh and hear them squeal. We weren't born into it, but it fits us just right. We thank the Father for his guiding light. We knew we were blessed with this kind of living. That's why we want to keep on giving back to farm life. True North farm life. It's a great life. True North farm life.
All right, here we go. Hey everybody, how's it going? And welcome to another episode of the True North Farm Life podcast. Today is April 1st, and Thomas, you know what's right around the corner, right?
It's time to get the TSS and the shotguns out, man. I'm fired up.
Can you afford TSS now?
Well, I went by the bank and took out a loan.
Man, have you heard what's happening with TSS right now? Like there's even some companies out there that are talking about not manufacturing TSS next year. Like, I've been told that a box of 5 shells may be $150.
Listen, I'm going to have to go back to Longbeard, I guess. It's too steep for me, man.
So the question is, how much do you really like it? Like I start looking in my pack, right? And I start digging, and I start trying to find all these other shells, and like, hey, here's one that I forgot that I had, and I put that back in the pack, and it's like finding these Easter eggs all over, right?
Yeah, not only that, I think the calling's going to have to get better for some folks too if it gets that high.
Yeah, I hear you. So talk to me, Thomas. What's going on in North Central Arkansas?
Man, it is. It's dry again. We've been without rain. I've had some burn plans wrote up for a month and a half. We've been on a burn ban. It seems to be like the entire month of March, and it's been slow going as far as the habitat management side of things for me. We prep and do our due diligence to get these burns accomplished, and due to some private landowners that maybe don't have the experience or the knowledge, fire will get away from them, and the next thing you know, the county judge, he's got the burn ban signs up, and it makes it tough for the guys that have taken the classes and educated themselves, and like I said, they've done their due diligence, making sure their fire breaks are in place, and they've got their burn plan written. And I think I guess I'll talk about it briefly, but on social media especially, I see a lot of posts about burn bans, and if you look in the comment section, one of the but like a lot of people on there being like, well, it's plumb ignorant that people are burning right now, and everybody's kind of up in arms about prescribed fire or just fire in general. And I think the reality of that is a lot of people are just misinformed and not educated enough to kind of understand what's going on, and it puts people like myself in a bind. I don't think the general public realizes that after I've done all of my prep and work, and wrote out my burn plan, I'm looking at specific parameters as far as weather conditions, wind direction, relative humidity, mixing height, everything kind of has to fall in place in order for me to start this prescribed fire. And I don't think the general public really understands what people that have educated themselves and went through the classes know, as far as like putting themselves in a position to run a prescribed fire on their property. And, it just takes one little mess up in order for, that to kind of run, the opportunity for somebody like me or anybody else to, run prescribed fire on their property. And it's aggravating, and I don't necessarily know if I have the answer to fix that. Jokingly, I was talking to a friend the other day, and one thing that I did say to him, I was like, if these guys, if a man was to say, hey, I'm going to burn off this 60 acres of brim sedge, and the old school throw a match, turn around and leave it. I think if there was a $2,500 to $3,000 fine associated with that, if it was to get out, I think it would cut back on a lot of that. I also think if you could provide information that shows that you've taken a Learn to Burn class and you have some credentialing to maybe give you an opportunity to burn rather than somebody that hasn't went through a course or whatever it might be. So that's me standing on my soapbox right off the bat, Chris. But
no, man, I love it. As people, conservationists, I can think about this, Thomas. I can think about, let's just talk 20 years ago. Smoke in the air was not a common thing that I seen. It was not. Now it seems like here in Northwest Arkansas, and maybe your part of Arkansas as well, from really February to April, on most days there's smoke in the air. And I know on some of them days there's been burn bans in my area, and there's smoke in the air. And what is that? That's Forest Service land that is being burned by people that are certified, that have the equipment. They're doing that, and there's a burn ban in my area when it's going on. But what I do know is they're trained professionals. They know what they're doing, and sometimes us as habitat people, right, that just want to burn their properties, or maybe we're contracted to help somebody else on their farm, we have to go by the burn bans. And, it's not an easy thing sometimes when we know, because we're educated, that the conditions are right, that we should be able to burn, but because of people that are, just like what you said, uneducated and have got themselves in a bind, and now we have people in political positions, which I get it. You've got a county judge of a county, and they're having wildfires get out from people that don't know what they're doing, and all of a sudden they throw the burn ban sign up because of that. Not necessarily because the conditions are bad, but because we've got uneducated people lighting a match and walking off, and that's a crazy byproduct that we live in today. But it's the reality of the situation, right?
Right, and not to mention, and this is not a knock on every county judge in the state either, but let's be honest, like a lot of them that are placing the burn bans, they don't know nothing about prescribed fire either, and and that's just the truth of the matter. And it's not necessarily their fault, because I can only imagine. I know when our county judge has our forestry beating down his door saying, listen, these guys are burning the world up, everything's getting out, we've been chasing stuff for the last 72 hours. He's going to go, yeah, I get it, man. I hate that you have to do it. Let's throw a burn ban on, and, let's get some moisture on the ground and get, then let's think about it afterwards. But it's just, I think if the public was more educated on the matter, I think it would help a lot of it. A lot of guys like me and you out.
I can remember about a month ago when I burned at the farm, and that happened to be about the time that the wildfires were happening in Oklahoma and western Kansas, right? And so at that time, everybody was talking about it. It was crazy. And so that day, the conditions were perfect. We had just gotten, less than a week ago, we'd just gotten 3 inches of rain. Like, it was muddy, to that point. And so I lit it up, man. It was perfect. I had a great burn. We had plenty of people. And by the way, thank you for the guys that helped. So, but anyway, we had a great burn, and, it all went great. But I had one of the neighbors that come by and he said, "Hey, what are y'all doing out here?" And I'm like, "We're burning." And they're like, "Isn't it dry to burn?" And I said, "Actually, it's on the verge of being too wet to burn." But they're like, "Well, there's wildfires everywhere." And I said, "Yeah, western Kansas and Oklahoma." I said, "But not here." And then he starts to talk, about his farm. He said, "Well, it's not your place you got to worry about. It's your neighbor's place." And I've never had a fire get out on my neighbor. Knock on wood, it's never happened, but it could. I'm not saying that it never could. I've got one of our agents here, John Hunley. They had a fire on their place, control burn that they did this past weekend, and they had a dead snag that fell across an electrical line. And so we talk about our right-of-ways, right? And they had all the right-of-ways cleaned, but the one thing they didn't take into account was a tree falling across an electric line of right-of-way, and it did. And so they did the right thing. They didn't try to do anything with it, right? I mean, that's the last thing you want to do is go out there and get electrocuted. They called the electric company. The electric company come out, removed it from the power line. No, nothing was damaged. Everybody was okay. But that kind of stuff happens. We try to plan things the best we can. But, in some cases when it's extremely dry, I get it. But in other cases where conditions are right, and because, I'm not saying stupid people because that's a bad word to use, but I'm going to say people that are uneducated, let fires get out, whether it be they're burning their trash in a trash can behind their house, and, something happens to get out and it lights 100 acres on fire, and, that kind of stuff. I was in your neck of the woods this past week on spring break. We were over there fishing at the river. And a neighbor there I visited with for probably an hour, really good guy, and he has 40 some odd acres there, and he has went through and cut down a bunch of cedar trees, and them cedar trees he just left lay on the ground. Now it's to the point that some of them has started to lose their needles off of it, and it's kind of a snag there. And I asked him, I said, "Have you ever thought about burning this place?" And he's like, "I'm just worried bad about burning, and I said, "Well," he said, "I would rather it just decay over time." And I said, "You know how long it's going to take that cedar tree to decay?" I said, "You and I will not be here by the time it's starting to decay." I said, "It will help it a lot better if you burn it and turn that thing to ash and put some carbon back in the ground and let that sunlight hit it." I said, "You'll be amazed at what pops up." And so we had a good conversation about that, and he's a workaholic. I'm telling you, he works on his property all the time. So hopefully I've talked to him a little bit about that, and maybe we can get a fire ran through there one day. But yeah, some people's just scared to death of it, and I get it, but it takes you being a part of something to learn the effects of it. And and I told him up there in Sycamore, I said, just go look at some of them glades that they've cut all the cedars on and they burn it. And I mean, you can go out there and hear the quails whistling. You can see the wildfires sprouting, and I mean, it's really beautiful to see. But sometimes people, they just uneducated and they don't know what will happen.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you hit the nail on the head. If he's waiting on those cedars to decay, he's going to be waiting a while. They use them for corner posts for a reason.
That's right.
I don't think they're going to be going anywhere anytime soon. And speaking of cedar, I mean, and just depending on when he actually did his, the cut and drop on the cedar. I learned something just last year. Usually, like I've talked about when I started, just what little habitat management that I knew. The first thing I did was start to cut eastern red cedar. I had a bunch of it and just walk through the timber, cut and drop, and then run fire through it. And there's when you fell a cedar, there's a few stages as far as like the needles. You've got as soon as it drops, they're green, and then after about 8, 9, 10 months, they'll be red, and then there's like the gray stage to where they start falling down. And if you run a fire through there, then you don't get very good consumption. And I had, a little, just a small 6-acre piece that I went in February. It might have been, actually, it was probably around January of the year before last. And I had it on the burn rotation for that a dormant season burn for like early spring. And I thought, man, those cedars haven't been on the ground that long. But FYI, for anybody that is worried about cedar consumption, I think they had been on the ground for, let's just say 3.5 months. Ran a fire through there, and it took care of, I'd say, 65-70% of the actual, not obviously the trunk, but just of the limbs. And we talk about it all the time. You learn something new every day, and that was one of them, because I've always heard, you fell cedar, you want to look at the following year. I say 12, give yourself 12 months to run a fire through it. But tell that guy to get a drip torch and run a fire through that 40 right there, man.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think we've talked about it probably long enough. But how's everything running over there in your part of the world? I know you've been seeing a few turkeys.
Yeah, turkeys is definitely. It's things are changing right now. I don't know if they're changing on your place, but like 2 to 3 weeks ago, I had a large group of birds, and I'm saying large being 30 to 40 birds on the farm. I think there was maybe 6 gobblers and probably 6 or 8 jakes and the rest hens. But since then, seeing a lot less turkeys on the farm. They're all kind of dispersing. They're kind of here, there, everywhere. It's just that time of the year where they're doing their thing. And I did, see the first hen on my farm. I say the first hen. I don't know if it was the first hen, but I did get a picture of one being bred on March the 15th. And so that was pretty crazy to see that early. But, hey, that's nature. It's happening the way it was supposed to be, and hopefully the birds will still be wound up come, the 21st of April. That's what we hope for. But, the other thing I've been working on, Thomas, I look at a month at a time on my farm, and then I look at a week at a time. What I need to get done this week, what I need to get done next week, and so on. So I look at the month, and then I look at it weekly, kind of what my goals are to get done. So one of the biggest things for the last part of March for me was installing my aeration system in my pond. And I got that installed. So, one thing turns into another for me, and I can't just be the person that does it halfway. I never have been that person, and I never will be that person. But what I did do is that, it's got this pole that mounts in the ground. It's a 4-inch metal pipe, and it's a 4.5 OD and a 4.25 or 4-inch ID. I can't remember. I think 4-inch ID, 4.5 OD. And the bracket for the solar panel sits right on the very top of it. Well, they want you to sink it about 3 foot in the ground. It just so happened I went down about 1.5 foot and I hit rock. And I'm like, oh boy, so what I do, I get a rock bar and I go out there and I work on that thing for 2 hours. And I might have dug 3 inches in 2 hours, blisters and sore. And so finally I'm like, this is wearing me out. I got to figure something else out. So I wasn't going to be able to get the 3 foot in the ground. So then I start thinking, well, what else can I do to make this thing sturdy, stout? I want to be here. I want this thing to be here till Jesus comes back. That's what I want it to be here till. And so what I did is I made a form that was about 3 foot by 5 foot, and I poured that whole form with the pipe inside of it. I mean, I first set my pipe right, and I, got it all level, straight with the world, and concreted it in, and then I put my form over the pipe, and I just put it in a way to where it's going to have a lot of support. And so I had bought 8 bags of concrete, and I'm like, this is probably 4 bags too much that I'm going to need. And so I start mixing concrete in 5-gallon buckets, and I mix 1 and 2 and 3. I get to 5, and I don't even have this thing nowhere near full. I'm like, I built the form way too big is what I did. So anyway, so I run to the store, get more concrete, come back. Anyway, I'll tell you, it took me a whole day to get that concrete set, leveled, just set up for that solar panel, the unit that sits on top of it. And then I've got a box for the batteries that set up there to be able to run my aeration at night. But at the end of the day, I was completely wore out. I mean, I don't know that I had another ounce in me, but I got it. It looks great. It's functioning great. And that's kind of been my main project for the end of March.
I was fixing to say, you didn't have no problem sleeping, did you, that night?
No, I think it ended up taking 14 bags of concrete. And I'm going to tell you, for those of you that have not mixed concrete and you mix it in a 5-gallon bucket and you mix 14 bags of concrete, you will be wore out. And if you're not, you're a better man than I am.
Absolutely. I'm 37 years old. And, of course, usually and I feel like I've mixed 1,000 bags of Quikrete in my life. And 99% of that, my grandpa's been standing over the top of me telling me, like, now listen, when you mix this, make sure it looks kind of like when you're making cornbread. You need to put a little bit. I'm like, listen, I'm standing on top of a wheelbarrow just sweating like I've never sweated before. And I thought, if I ever see another bag of Quikrete, I'll be okay. But yeah, I feel your pain, man. Absolutely. To touch on, I'm going to back up just a little bit. You mentioned that hen. You saw I had a picture of a hen getting bred. I think what you said, March 15th.
That's
something
it.
Like that. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I've ever had one. A picture of one that early. I have had them, end of March, right in there. I guess, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's been, I don't know how many years it's been since Arkansas has kind of, pushed season dates, mid-April to the latter part of April now. Mm-hmm. And, I can remember being in high school and we'd have spring break and it would fall on turkey season. Me and my buddy would spend the entire spring break turkey hunting. And it's, it's all changed now. And I hear a lot of, this is from several people, they'll be gobbled out, they'll be harder to hunt, this, that, and the third. And I'm just this is my opinion. Mm-hmm. From hunting my farm. I'm going to be honest with you. The only thing that I don't like about the season dates right now, it's just the fact that I can't get out there and hunt them. Mm-hmm. My ability to kill a turkey has been better than it has been, not because I'm this great hunter, but because I've got more birds. I have more birds now because of, habitat management. But just to, we're going to dig into just hunting turkeys for a second. And this has been my experience, especially since these dates have moved back in the latter part of April and then into May. I've found that, you may not hear 15 birds burning the woods down. But if you if I'm out there in that first week of May now and I hear 5 or 6, I got news for a lot of people. They ain't got a whole lot of girlfriends that time of year. Mm-hmm. And to me, it seems like it's way, especially off the limb. Everybody, if you turkey hunted enough, early part of season, it's pretty tough sledding. Bird, he might burn it down off the limb. He pitches down, he'll gobble 5 times and shut up because he's got hens with him. But I have, and it took a while. I mean, I shouldn't took a while because I was skin up about it. I'm like, man, I ain't gonna kill nothing. But I started finding these birds in the first part of May, or even which I would consider the latter part of the season. It's made my hunting pretty good, to be honest with you. Now, go ahead.
Well, I would just say this, is that, most turkey killers want to kill them as soon as they can. Most turkey conservationists are okay with the season being where it's at. Yep. And the reason I say that is because, the whole push to move the season to the dates that we're at is that the majority of the hens are bred by the time the season opens. And so if the majority of the hens are bred by then you're not really worried about a gobbler being killed because they're already bred. And now, and I know there's re-nest and they breed again. I know all that. But what I'm getting at is your first shot at it is the most important. That first shot, the most important shot that you can get at a successful, thriving nest. And just be straight up. Arkansas, we've been in a turkey decline. I mean, we're starting to see numbers come back up for the last, 3 or 4 years, which is great. But will we ever see the numbers that we've seen in the late 90s, early 2000s? I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to be a pessimist, but did we see the best time ever in turkey hunting in the state of Arkansas? I can't tell you that, but one thing I will tell you is we judge everything from it. We judge how hunting is today based upon the best time that we're ever seen. Yep. And I don't know that that's fair. The best time of my life, I was the most physical fit at this age. Should that be the judge of me now? Probably not. So all I'm getting at is that with wildlife management and anything, I'm talking rabbits to squirrels to deer to turkeys, we see these peaks and we see these valleys of the population over time. Us as hunters and as conservationists, we want to see the peak and we want to see it hold there forever. That's what we want to see. But I just don't know with turkeys. You think about it. There's birds of prey. There's every predator in the woods. There's snakes getting raiding nests. There's all hunters. There's all kinds of things that's out to get them. Okay, so it's not just about curing one thing. That's not what it's about. It's about curing a bunch of things. And so that's what makes it so hard a lot of times when we start talking about turkey numbers and, hey, what's that silver bullet? What can we do? Well, I know what I'm doing, and I know what you're doing, Thomas. You're trapping. You're doing habitat work on your property. We're both seeing the benefits of that, right? That's right. But I'm going to say that if you look at the whole state of Arkansas, what percentage do you think of the private lands out there that's doing what we're doing? I mean, if you had to guess, you think it's 1%? I bet it's not 1% of all the private lands out there that are trapping and doing some kind of prescribed fire on their property yearly. I bet it's not. So when you start thinking about that, and I'm not going on a rant here, but I hear people talk about it all the time, and everybody says, well, the damn game and fish. It's the game and fish, and it's this, that, and the other. Bull crap. It's not the game and fish. It's us. It's us. It's up to us to make it better, not somebody else. So get out there, take your prescribed fire class, go out there, learn your management on your property, do the things, do the things that you can control, because them are things that we have within our control that we can do. And, I'm passionate about this. I know you're passionate about it too, but, we just gotta be better stewards of the land. And that's what I love about what we do, Thomas, is that we're on properties each and every day. We can talk with folks about how to be better stewards of the land and help them with that process and with that property. And it gives a lot of joy to my heart to see that happening each and every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And you made a good point, as far as just, a hunter's opinion on when the best time, what the best year was as far as turkey hunting goes, the good old days, that type, and to be honest with you, any time that I'm sharing my opinion on here, it's usually strictly based on just my property in general. But just to be honest with you, like right as far as turkey hunting goes, right now is the good old days. Like it is good. It is really, really good because I can think back when I first started, and I started turkey hunting late, maybe 2003, 2004. And, I can remember then, like it was, you would hear several birds and it was a fun, like you could pick one out, and if you mess that up, you could go to another one. And then, you saw that decline, and, you might show up and if you heard 3 birds, you were really doing good. And then and I look at, especially my kiddo in youth season, like he's killed a bird every youth weekend, if not on the first day, since he was 6 years old. There's not a whole lot to bitch and complain about when your child's having that type of opportunity.
That's right.
So I agree with you, man. It's like, maybe it's bad because you're not putting in the work. Maybe you need to look at what you're doing on your property in order to, have the opportunities to just enjoy hunting in general, whether it be deer, turkey, rabbit, squirrel, you name it. Because if I had to guess, the people that are complaining the most are doing the least.
100%. You're exactly right of that. And I'm never one to point the finger at any one thing or anybody, but I will point it back at myself. I will do that. And so what I do know is that on my property, I'm doing as much as I possibly can. Now, could it be more? There always. Listen, anybody that's ever owned a farm, tell me when you've ran out of work. Huh? Does it ever happen? It never happens, Thomas. I mean, you're always wanting to do something with this. There's more cows to feed over here. We gotta spray this field to kill the whatever coming up in it that's invasive. I mean, it never stops. My wife asks me all the time. She's like, it seems like you come up with more stuff to do at the farm. I said, honey, I'm not coming up with it. It's happening to me. I'm not making this stuff up. I've got stuff to do, and it seems like when I get up there, and we've talked about this a little bit, like how special my time is at the farm. Let's talk about like special time. So I get out there, and I work my tail end off from the time I get there to the time I leave. A lot of times because I'm short for time, right? We got to get back. We got to show properties. We got, daughter's got volleyball games. We got life just like everybody else does. And so that time that I get up there, if I don't like work for every minute that I got, I won't be able to get done what I want to get done that month. And so that's the part of having goals, right? If you just say, well, I'll just do it when I get around to it, guess what? You never get around to it. Never happens. So you got to make a plan. You got to follow the plan. And if you get behind one week, next week you got to catch up. That's just the way it is, But I enjoy that time so much. It's my therapy. And also, I look back at it and I see all this game thriving on my property. And do I hunt? 100% I hunt. But that's part of the plan. That's part of, all right. So we went rabbit hunting this year. Had a group of people rabbit hunt. We killed 27 rabbits, okay? Pretty good on 160 acres. Well, I was out there on the farm this past week, and I don't know how many rabbits I seen, but a lot more than 27. And I'm just here to tell you, it's like, why are they multiplying like that? They're multiplying because there's less predators on the landscape. There's better cover on the landscape. There's better food on the landscape. Water. They got everything they need. And just like the turkeys and the deer, right? We're making this for them is what we're doing. And we're making it for our kids and for anybody that we want to have come out and hunt, all that stuff. And just like what you said with your place, you've seen an increase in numbers, and you haven't had any hunting problems where maybe other people are like singing the blues. Well, hey, let me clue you in on a note here. When you have the best habitat around, you attract the most game. End of story. All right, end of story. So if you've got a closed canopy forest and you're not seeing any deer, you're not seeing any turkeys, guess what? You need to open that sucker up, get some sunlight to the ground, manage it, because that's what makes the game come back is management.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you know, I think I've said it before. It's like I don't need an A+ property. I just need it better than my neighbors. And that doesn't mean I don't need to work to have an A+ property. But you know, and I think it's hard for people to wrap their head around the enjoyment of seeing all of the work that you put into a piece of property kind of come to fruition. And you know, after working a particular piece of property and putting in the sweat equity and the hours, and then turning around and taking a kid or a family member or a friend, now that I'm a little bit older, I get more enjoyment out of that than I do killing something myself. Don't get me wrong, I'm still mad at us. I'll get in there and, you know, get after them, but you know, it is unbelievably rewarding to watch all of the work and sweat equity that you put into a particular piece of property, and then, you know, especially a child gets so much enjoyment out of it. And I think that is how that's how you recruit more hunters in general, because you know how it is. You take a 6-7-year-old kid out and you put him in a box stand and he doesn't see nothing and he's freezing to death. Like, it's hard to get somebody to come back that way. But if you take a kid out and he at minimum gets to see some wildlife, I don't care if it's deer, turkey, or whatever, it's not probably, I've never taken a child yet that's went, hey, when can we do this again? And you know, like I said, it's probably, you know, other than coaching, it's probably one of the most probably the most rewarding thing that I've ever experienced.
You know, I heard Toxie say one time, and it's always stuck with me, and he said the hunt is a byproduct of good management. Yep. So when you think about that, and you might expand and say the quality of the hunt is a byproduct of good management, but it is, truthfully. You work on this farm for, you know, really, you know, let's just say 8 months out of the year, 9 months out of the year, and then we hunt for 2 or 3 months out of the year, and it is just, you know, the hunt quality of it. I mean, I can see the difference since I've owned the farm, and not saying anything bad about the people that had it before me, great people, but I feel like in the stuff that I've done to it, it has enhanced the huntability of the farm and also the carrying capacity of the farm. So, you know, and see that change over time. It's just it's something special to see. And I see more daylight movement of deer, you know, turkeys everywhere, and you know, just like you know, we talked about processes and what I think about, and you know, my biggest process or thought process was the aeration system on my pond, because that was a big thing to do. I couldn't, you know, Seth and Jay, they helped me with that, and I appreciate that, because it takes several people to set them things out in the pond. But another thing, you know, we're on corn planting time, and it's time to get the corn planted right now. Well, I was behind this year because my buggy that I used to spray with all the time, when we were doing our controlled burn, something happened with the wiring. I don't know, but when you plug in a cigarette lighter now, it won't spray, and my lights won't work. I don't know what's wrong with it. So I was sitting here racking my brain thinking about what I was going to do. So finally it dawned on me, dummy, just go get some alligator clips and wire it direct to your battery. And, you know, because it still ran fine, there wasn't any problem with that. So I went and did that. And so this past weekend, had a buddy come up, and we got all my corn ground. I sprayed it to kill it because it had weed in it, and then let that set for about 6 hours on it. It absorbed that chemical, and then he dissed all that under. All my corn ground that I had, it was already cut down, but I hadn't worked that corn, you know, stalk and stuff into the ground. Went ahead and dished that up. And I had this one honey hole area that I wanted. Anyway, I wanted to plant it to this particular. It's chicory and white clover is what it is, but it's a specific blend called Seclusion 360, and it's made by whitetail Northwoods Whitetails, and it has a lot more chicory than clover. So that's the other reason I was kind of wanting this. And I was wanting to try that in a mix with quite a bit of chicory because, it's about having variety on your property, not just beans or not just corn. It's about having clover and chicory. And I think about the times when the clover gets a little hot and, it starts to go dormant maybe in the summertime. The chicory has this long taproot that goes deep into the soil and it pulls moisture. So when you get in a drought, it's green, it's lush, it's something that's very highly desirable at that time of the year. So it was something that I wanted to change on my farm, and I did that this week. I took that area, it was beans, and I went ahead and I broadcast my fertilized and also my wheat this fall in there. So I had wheat probably about 6 or 8 inches high in there, and I sprayed that too and worked that ground all up. And then I took, my cedar, and I cultipacked it after I worked the ground twice. I went over it twice because it was a little rougher, and so I got it all smooth, and then I seeded it, and then I went back over it with a cultipacker again. So now just hoping for rain. We're supposed to get rain tomorrow. We're supposed to get rain Saturday. So it's coming. But there's always something, Thomas. There's always something that we're working on the farm to try to make a little better. The 17th of this month, I've got my Northern 100 Northern black bass coming to put into the pond. And so these are being shipped overnight in a container, and they're coming to me, and I'm doing the hot track to the farm and putting them in the pond. So a lot of stuff happening, hunting season coming on. I don't know if you've got any hunts planned, but I do. Where are you going?
I'll be in Missouri this year. Of course, didn't draw Kansas. I'll be in Missouri this year. Of course, obviously I'll hunt here at the farm. It was a race between Tennessee and Missouri this year, and we kind of decided, me and my buddy that I grew up with, we decided we'll hit Missouri this year, and then we're gonna head east, and I've got a few pins dropped from some friends over there, and we're gonna go to Tennessee next year. I've heard good things about Tennessee, especially East Tennessee, so we're gonna try that out next year. But I'll be close to home this year. What about yourself?
Yeah, so. Of course, Arkansas, I'll be over in your neck of the woods for the opener. And my buddy James Pratt drew us the coveted Sillamore tag. I've drew it a couple times, but he drew this year, so I'm going to go over there with him. Probably, I can't hunt, but I'll probably just go with him. I do have a small 40-acre piece over there that I plan on hunting, and I heard some birds there this past week when I was there, so pretty excited for that. Actually, I missed a time frame. I'm going to Nebraska bow hunting. My daughter turned 16 on April the 7th, and so the 8th of April we're leaving to go bow hunting in Nebraska, and that's always a really good, fun hunt. That time of year there, you kind of get in before the guns are there. And I'll tell you, too, about that hunt. If you like to archery hunt, there's a ton of walk-in areas in Nebraska, and they're not hit very hard in archery season. So if you want to go up there and take a bird with archery equipment, you kind of have your run of a lot of places, and Nebraska is a really, really good state.
Absolutely. Nebraska's been extremely good to me, and I'm going to be honest, the first year that I went up there, it's typical. We got to a place and just small talk, and I kept seeing these pop-up blinds everywhere, and I just finally asked. I'm like, "What's the deal?" And they're like, "Oh, bow hunting." I said, "They're of course redneck like me." I'm like, bow hunting them up here. And I go, yeah, but, you get after them a little bit earlier. And it was a new experience for me. Of course, we was toting around the 12 gauges at the time, but you're exactly right. If a man wanted to get on them early before, no pressure, and, in that part of the world, you found the right place. They got plenty of birds.
Yeah, it's good. Of course, we'll hunt the farm in Missouri there, and then I was one of the lucky ones, Thomas. Sorry you didn't draw Kansas, but for whatever reason, Kansas has done something different this year with their drawing situation because there was like 5 or 6 of us last year that put in for the tag, and all 5 or 6 of us drew. And this year, it was just the opposite. Out of 6 people, 2 people drew. And I know of several people that didn't draw for Kansas. So I don't know what they did different this year, but and I kind of hate that, I hate it for a couple reasons. The people that we hunt with up there are getting older, and the people we go with are getting older. And, and I don't know how many more turkey seasons I have, but I'm going to enjoy every one of them that I got. But, I think about that, and I kind of hate that sometimes because that's a special trip with special people. And we go up there on that hunt. We have a really good time. I don't know what it is about that hunt, but I feel as free and as comfortable hunting anywhere there than I have anywhere in the country. I don't know what it is about that place. It's the county we hunt in is 90 square miles, and the population is a little under 3,000 people. So when you talk about something like that, it just feels right.
Yep.
So I don't know, but may hunt Oklahoma. Haven't. That'll be an invited thing. So if I get invited, I'll go. But if I don't, I probably won't. But not going a whole lot. Not like a Idaho, Washington trip. Next year, I do plan on going to the Northeast. I want to go hunt. I've talked to a guy up there, and this is a pretty cool story. Maybe not a story, but it sounds like a really cool hunt. He says that there's some places off the coast in the Northeast on an island that he can take me and kill a turkey. And so think about that. And I'm not going to say what state it's in, but I'll just tell you, just think about that, going by boat off the coast to an island and shooting a turkey. That just sounds like a recipe for something special to me.
Well, listen, I hate to get out of the house, much less go anywhere. But if you mention, hey, there might be some turkey hunting involved, say when.
Yeah.
Say when. All my traveling, I was talking to someone the other day, and they said, you probably don't leave town. I was like, not unless I'm hunting. I really don't. But yeah, man, it sounds like a special place. And I've got a buddy that he's a journeyman lineman, and he's over there in California right now, in of all places. But I would have lost money, but that place is chock full of turkeys. He's sending videos every single day. And I mean, you know how it goes. This time of year rolls around, and everybody's sending pictures and videos and trail cams. So I'm as ready as I've ever been. But we're gonna sit back and wait, and it'll be here before you know it.
I promise you, this is my favorite time of the year right now that we're getting ready to come on, and for several reasons. The flowers are starting to bloom, the mushrooms are popping, the turkeys are gobbling, the crappie are biting, everything is just fresh, starting. And I'll just challenge you, man. Our listeners out there, take somebody new hunting this year, and we look at this thing like, how are we going to get more hunters to contribute, or maybe not contribute, to just be a hunter, take part, right? We're about 2% of the population right now, hunters. So think about that, 2 to 3% of the population. 3 people out of 100 is a hunter. How long do you think our rights are going to be here? How long do you think that we're going to be here protecting it? today there's a lot of things going for people's time. They got games, they got these phones that they, the biggest saver of time in the world, but seems like it's all we spend our time on is our phones, right? So, there's a lot of things to occupy our time, and it seems like less and less people are getting outdoors, going hunting, going fishing, going hiking, just enjoying nature. And so I encourage you to take somebody, and it doesn't have to be a kid, but a kid's a good start. It could be, here's what I've noticed. When we've started taking kids, first-time hunters, you know what we find out? Their parents have never hunted either. And of course, we take their parents on the hunt because we want them to be there with them, for several reasons. Safety reasons for one, but if they have to tell them to be quiet in the blind, they can tell them to be quiet in the blind, and they not feel bad about it. But all I'm getting at, their parents are learning the same thing at the same time. So really, we're teaching two, not one, but two. And so while we're doing that, it just takes us as hunters to take somebody new every year. Somebody that was my neighbor introduced me to turkey hunting, and Mr. Wayne Piles, and I'm so thankful that he did that because it has changed my life literally forever. We're here on a podcast on a Wednesday night sitting here talking about turkeys, and that's been in my blood since I've been in my younger teens, and it's just crazy to think about that. But this is the things that get us passionate. This is the things that get us fired up. It makes us do what we do, and turkey hunting is right around the corner. I couldn't be more excited. And at this, I'm going to end it, Thomas, man. Thank you for tuning in this week, Thomas. A lot of good input this week, from turkey hunting to burning to just overall management, man. It's good talking with you. We'll see y'all in a couple weeks. And, hey, get after them turkeys and take somebody new hunting. See you later.
Guys.
We love to hear a Bob White singing his song. See a big buck on a frosty dawn. Watch our kids catch their first bluegill. See them laugh and hear them squeal. We weren't born into it, but it fits us just right. We thank the Father for his guiding light. We knew we were blessed with this kind of living. That's why we want to keep on giving back to farm life. True North farm life. It's a great life. True North farm life.